like that.
What is this from?
From the John DeVita Broadcast Center, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another broadcast of Armchair Experts with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network and Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich on Wednesday, September the 16th, the year of our Lord, 2015. And now, here they are, live, in person, breathing on their own, and not blue in the face, Rich and Jim.
Hey.
Every week, every time he does something, every time we do this, he adds
John,
something to it.
Jim looks a little blue in the face.
I'm a little bit blue in the face, but, you know. So, we got you over here, Mr. Fancy Schmancy, WGN radio announcer, news person type.
I was just trying to think. The music and the announcement reminded me of Dave Baum.
Oh,
The
yeah.
start of the Dave Baum talk
Yeah.
show on, was it AIT?
No,
No.
WIND.
IND.
WIND.
It just, as the music was, good choice of music there. Thank you. I like it.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful thing.
Yeah, this voice you hear, if it sounds familiar to anybody who's up late on the weekends,
Oh,
is
very late on the weekend.
Roger Badish from WGN Radio.
Howdy do.
And an old friend of mine.
Yeah. In many ways.
In many aspects.
I thought you were just going to keep talking without ever introducing Roger to anybody.
Well, I wanted to let Roger get his
I've never needed an
ruminations.
introduction before. I just
He's a
jumped
man
right
who
in.
needs no introduction.
If anyone listens to the shows on the weekends, I just jump right in.
They're all asleep, though, right now. What are you kidding me?
Yeah, I know. I should be asleep too, but it's.
I mean,
I'm okay.
He does 3 shifts on the weekend. He does midnight to 5 on Saturday.
Well, actually, now I got to start at 10:30 because I'm doing the traffic on Friday night. So I do the traffic from 10:30 to midnight. Mm-hmm. Then the news from 12:30 till 5:30. Mm-hmm. That's Saturday morning. And it's so weird because I'm coming in on a Friday and I leave on a Saturday. So if you ask me Monday what day it is, I have no clue.
You have no idea.
Then Saturday night I come back in and I'm on from 12:30 to 4:30 Sunday morning. Mm-hmm. Then I come back Sunday night and I'm on from 6 to midnight.
I don't know, John. Should I give the disclaimer now? Because I always get hit with the disclaimer, but we actually are, we're advertising WGN on WRHS here. Thanks, Jim.
That's right. We try to be fair with everyone, and just remember what I always say when I do the station ID during basketball.
Yeah.
WRHS FM Norwich on a clear night. You can hear us on River Road.
Roger, I got to ask you this: is there any traffic on Friday night?
Yeah, there's cars out there.
There's cars out there.
Yeah. Actually, we had construction on, when was it? Saturday morning.
Oh, my God, excitement.
Yeah, I know. Construction on the, it was moving construction.
Oh,
not that someone was moving their furniture.
no.
but
So there was here, we do this. We
That's
go
the
then
over
10
worst
minutes
kind of
later-
construction there is.
But then the travel times pop up every so often, and it'll say now it's taking an extra 30 minutes to get from this point to this point. I'm thinking, it's 2 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday morning. Who's the one guy who's driving so slow he's stuck in the construction traffic? It's got to be the one guy that I'm staying behind the guy with the sign who says slow, right?
Right.
I'm not gonna worry about it. I'm gonna stay behind that section, and when they move to the next section, I'll just follow them. So it's taking him an extra 30 minutes to get to wherever he's going.
That's
It was
right.
the most ridiculous thing I saw over the weekend. It was funny. I kept laughing. I says, "What?" And then they'll stop for they'll move, and then all of a sudden it's 0 delay time. And then 5 minutes later, it's 30 minutes again. I'm
farther down the road.
What is this guy doing? It was funny. It was crazy. But yeah,
you
there's a lot of traffic.
you need something to amuse you.
At that hour,
At that,
But it's there's traffic on the weekends. There's a lot, and especially now it's still construction season. in Chicago, so you know.
So you know what, Roger? Could you go over again? From 10:30 to midnight, you do traffic. Then from I
Friday
blanked
night,
out after that. I'm trying
sorry.
to picture the traffic from 10:30 to midnight.
You're trying to figure it out. I'm trying to figure it out still. Yeah. So I do the traffic reports. I start at 10:30, and the last one I do is midnight.
Okay.
Then I switch desks, and I do the entire newscast, which includes traffic. I continue to do the traffic, but I do the news, sports, weather, the whole shebang.
This is the guy I call and give the basketball scores too during our.
Oh yeah, yeah. So,
this is
I'll do
the guy.
high school basketball scores, and then all of a sudden I'll get a text saying, "You forgot."
Here's Ridgewood's score.
Yeah, right. Here's Richard. And I go,
And he did give me a plug one night. He said
Yes,
from
I
our
did.
reporter Jim Leon.
yeah.
Yeah, I have to say this. I barely ever listened to WGN, but when Jim told me that he knew you, I knew the name immediately. Now, how long have you been doing this?
On and off for about 10 years.
See, I don't know if it was osmosis or just your name. Just the few times I listened to WGN,
Yeah.
your name stuck with me. I'm not sure.
Now you worked for KQX, right?
Yeah, that was back 79 to 81.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was funny. The first I will tell you, and maybe it was osmosis too. The first time I met Roger, and he mentioned about that he did news at WKQX. That's what I remember you.
Oh my God.
Which scared me.
Really, especially since the last doctor report we had.
Right,
You know?
exactly. It scared me.
Yeah, a couple of other people have said that they remembered me from back then, and I even had someone, I can't remember now. They, of course, my memory's failing, but they mentioned they remember me from Las Vegas when I worked out in Las Vegas, and they were working in California in radio, and umpteen years later, they said, "Oh yeah, I remember when you were in Vegas." And I'm like, wow, that's strange. That's very strange. But the station I worked at in Vegas was, I think it was prescient because it was at 720 on the AM dial, which is WGN signal.
Right.
And so they were directional. The signal was directional, which means it went out west. And so they could have heard me in California.
I think sometimes it's you don't realize it because it's you, but you're the guy on the radio, so I'm a listener, so it's easy for me to remember who you are. And I know you don't interact with people the same way as maybe other people do because you're in a studio,
Right.
But it's easy to focus in on that name, and I think those things are pretty easy to remember, really.
Well, I don't know if the name is unusual or not, or I mean, it's not a radio name. I mean, it's my own name. It's not like Charlie Van Dyke, or
Charlie Tuna.
or Charlie Tuna,
The
or
real-
Ron Britton, or
the real Don
Steele.
Well, see, I never even think about that part of it. I just figure, okay, Don Steele is Don Steele,
Right.
Roger Badish is Roger Badish. I never think about guys, men or women, changing their names for a radio persona or what have you.
It was funny when I was doing stuff at Chris Radio. The board operator when I started there his name was Joel Yeast, and it was spelled Yeast, Joel Yeast.
Oh,
And he was doing he was working on the weekends at the Mix.
okay.
And this was like back in the 90s, and he was going to get his first shift to do overnights on the air.
Ooh.
And the station manager told him, that name ain't going to work. Joel Yeast is not going to work.
Right, yeah.
That's not going to work.
Well, I mean,
he looked out.
yeah.
He looked out the window and he saw a Ryder truck rental go by, and he looked back at him and he said, "Joel Ryder." He said, "Okay, you're on."
Joel Yeast, it could have been, if he's doing overnights, because it's,
Rise.
right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, what's wrong with yeast?
Yeah.
Plus, I like yeast too. That's
Yeast?
good.
Yeah, he pronounced
What is
it.
it? Oh, yeah. It's from Young Frankenstein. It's like you would think that Yeast is yeast, but he says, no, it's yeast. And what is on Young Frankenstein? Is
Frankenstein.
Frankenstein.
Yes.
Not Frankenstein. Frankenstein. And then what is, and then the
Igor. No,
yeah,
Igor.
Igor. It's Igor. Yes. Hey, Roger, I know you've known Jim But
I tried to forget him, but
well, a lot of us are in that.
We try to deny the relationship.
Yeah, right.
But since we're you're here to be interviewed, if you want to put it that way. Sure. I don't look at it quite that way, but I'm curious though. Now that I've gotten to meet you, and you went back to Vegas a little bit ago. Well, how did you first get started with all of this?
Well, actually, it was my brother, who was 6 years older than me, and he got into broadcast. Actually, he got into a shortwave, and we had an old radio set from my grandparents, and he reconfigured it to be able to key shortwave Morse code, and he started getting call cards,
QSL cards,
from all over the world, and it intrigued me. Plus, I was naturally intrigued by television and radio. I just thought it was the neatest thing in the world, and I could watch TV 24/7. I loved the shows. I studied them. I saw how they were put together. Radio intrigued me, especially growing up in Chicago. We had so many great radio stations.
So many great personalities.
Exactly. And one of the first stations that I ever listened to was WGN. I think I might have been about maybe 4 or 5 when I first realized that it was WGN, and my parents had it on in the car. And the first show that I listened to on WGN was Franklin McCormick, Meister Brau Showcase.
Yeah.
And it was like magic.
I remember.
It was like magic.
Yeah, I remember listening to WGN as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
I remember Wally Phillips doing a show at 5:15 to 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
Also playing top 40 records at night.
Yeah. Well, they used to play a lot of music on WGN.
And I also remember Fraser Thomas had a show on the radio too.
Mm-hmm.
And the one that I remember too, except when he wasn't, it was during the off season. Jack Quinlan used to do a show in the afternoon.
That's right.
A
lot of these guys, and they were like family.
Mm-hmm.
It was great. How about listening to Bears games on WGN radio?
Oh, there you go.
On Sundays,
there you go.
huh?
Yeah.
That's
right.
That's right,
Irv,
Jack.
Yeah, Irv Kupcinet and Jack Brickhouse.
That's right.
I mean, it was mad. Who got homework done? I didn't get homework done. It was always
the joke that Tom Dreesen, I remember, introduced. It was either Jack Brickhouse or Irv Kupcinet at some event, and he said, Jack Brickhouse. He said, "Ladies and gentlemen, the Hall of Famer, Jack Brickhouse." He said, "You realize there's a whole generation of football fans who grew up listening to Jack and Irv do the games and know nothing about the game."
Exactly. Right.
That's right, Jack.
John's bringing
John's
a picture
got a
here.
Whoa,
there he is.
What?
With Wally Phillips and Clark Weber.
That's right.
Mother Weber's oldest son.
And I want to say I worked with both of them, but I worked with them when I was doing public relations. And we went over to Clark's show. My God, this was 25-ish years ago, maybe. When I was working for Gloria Jean's Coffee. And we brought coffee over, and he talked to them and everything. And then Wally was off mornings when I started doing stuff with him. Mm-hmm. He was doing the noon show, and he would do it from different restaurants. I don't know if you guys remember that.
Yeah, I do remember.
He was on
that.
for an
like
hour,
an
2
hour
hours,
and a half,
yeah, right,
2
right,
hours.
Right.
There we go.
Yeah,
there's another. Yeah, with Joe Gentile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Boy, we're pulling out the history here.
That's right. Picture of Wally Phillips with Joe Gentile.
That's fantastic.
I used to help a friend of mine at Loyola games on the Stats, and directly across from us there was Joe. There was Joe sitting in the middle in his big comfy chair at the Gentile Center.
Fantastic. Yeah, so that was my beginning at WGN, or at least my relationship with WGN. Then, of course, I got into more picture. There's Wally. There's a publicity thing from.
And it's autographed, too.
Yeah, from WGN. Yeah, that's the old logo. Mm-hmm. I got a couple of baseball caps with that. But then rock and roll came in. And, of course, growing up in the 60s in Chicago, you listened to WLS, WCFL. And you got hooked on all the DJs, Ron Britton, Barney Pip,
Yeah.
all those guys,
and
you know. So
Ron
and-
Ray on WLS, Ron Riley.
yeah,
Art
it was
Roberts.
great, yeah, and I had the pleasure of actually working with Art Roberts when I was at Q101. He was there, in the
right.
afternoons, and I would do anchor newscast during his shift. And I was like sitting amongst royalty. It was really cool.
Late in his life, we managed to email correspondence
Oh,
a number
okay.
of times with Art. Mm-hmm. And with the emails, it was very nice. It was very nice. He'd respond.
Yeah.
And I sent something to him one time, and it was after he had his stroke.
Oh, okay.
And he responded. He responded back, and something about some question about music and how you're feeling. He said, "Takes me a little longer to write." He says, "I'm only doing it with one hand now."
Oh, wow.
And he said, and at the end, he says, "Good to hear from you. I haven't heard from you for a while. Let's not make it so long."
This
Next
is
time.
Art
Very
Roberts,
cool.
Jim?
Art Roberts.
Yeah.
Yeah, guys, I have to throw this out. I'm thinking that Art Roberts is maybe one of the last radio personalities to have a sort of a fictional show. If I don't know if that's a good description. Remember, right at the end of his most requested top three,
Yeah,
he
Peter
would have what is it? Ray Van Steen.
Ray
Was he
Van
the
Steen.
voice, or was he the character?
No, he was the character. He did the voice. And I can't. Peter.
Their production director, maybe?
Well, Ray Van Steen, I think, was their production director. Ray Van Steen is a if he's still around, with great voiceover, talented. Actually, voiceover
They had some
talented.
great at both stations. Had some great
Voiceover
guys.
talented
Yeah.
teacher.
Yeah.
I was trying to get some ideas if I wanted to do voiceover work, and I went to. He'd have a little one night thing, and I listened.
Oh, okay, like
go-
an extension class
yeah,
or something.
Yeah, and it was like what to do. Make up the audition tape, and then some celebrity will get your job, and
And then, yeah, right. They'll steal all your ideas.
they'll steal all your
Yeah, that
ideas.
was- yeah, he did. I loved listening to those guys late at night. How many of us grew up with a transistor radio underneath the pillow late at night, right?
Yeah,
that's for
Listening
sure.
to those shows.
Yeah.
It was just wonderful.
And it was like you. I got fascinated by radio, and I got fascinated by if we'd go up to Wisconsin, and you'd start to pick up some other
Sure.
things in the transistor radio. You tune into it. In fact, when I think for my graduation gift in 8th grade, my parents got me a Zenith Transoceanic. The big one with the big antenna, and you could start tuning in. And I would.
How many bands on that one?
Oh, let's see, AM, FM, at least 3 shortwave.
Okay.
At least
Yeah.
3.
Yeah.
Yeah, 5 bands total. Yeah, at least John's holding up 5. I said it was at least 5 bands
Yeah.
total. And you'd start to dial in, and I was like you. I'd get the QSL cards. I'd send for the QSL cards. These were cards that you could request from the station to show that you listened to them, but you had to tell them, I listened from such and such to such and such, and this is what I heard.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It was a postcard.
it was
Just
a
a little
postcard,
postcard.
and
Yeah,
some of
yeah.
them were really nice.
Yeah.
Some of them were really nice, and the one that I always have told us that I always got the biggest kick about, I picked up Radio Havana one night, an English language broadcast out of Radio Havana. And, and they said, if you're interested in the QSL card, our address is whatever. So I sent for it. I got the QSL card. And for a number of years thereafter, I would get a Happy New Year card from Radio Havana. For at least 5 years after, every year, right around the first of the year, I would get a Happy New Year card from Radio
That's
Havana.
something.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And the one that I always regret that I didn't get enough information on to be able to do it. I'm playing with the AM dial one night,
Okay.
and I'm just past 780.
Right.
And
BBM?
Yeah, just
Yeah.
past BBM on 780, and all of a sudden in my headset I hear, next week on the Radio Netherlands Jazz Hour.
you
And
never-
it faded.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh. That would have been cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So this is my background, and then I got into high school. I went to, I hate to say it because I'm on enemy territory here, Evanston Township High School.
We don't care about that.
Okay, cool.
If it was, if you said Fenton, you'd be in trouble.
No. But Evanston High School had radio and TV facility, one of the first ones anywhere in the city in a school, and I started working there, and then they rebuilt it while I was still there. So it was in some old classrooms, and Evanston had a growth spurt, the high school, for a number of students coming in, and they built all new sections onto the school. One of them was a broadcast center. So I worked in there for 4 years. Then I went to SIU Carbondale, majored in broadcasting, and then went into the business. So that's my background.
And you worked in stations down in Carbondale.
Yeah,
radio and TV. Yeah, I've seen
WizU Radio, WSIU.
Yeah, and I've seen some snappy pictures of you on. Oh my gosh, the Weatherman
with my Madras double knit.
You know, I'm sitting here, I'm concentrating on the fact that Roger is an on-air personality, but I had totally forgotten until he mentioned that he went to Evanston High School. All of the great work that you've done in a couple of high schools in the Chicago area.
Oh, yeah, that's when
what I'm particularly interested in, and I'll just set the stage briefly,
Sure.
But at Ridgewood, one of the things that, at least at this point in time, we're having a problem, getting kids interested in the media. I'll just use that. Mm-hmm. But I found it really fascinating when Jim told me that you had been at, was it Clemente was one?
Clemente was the last one,
and
sure.
CVS was another.
Right.
And that you had a lot of success at both of those schools.
Well, at CVS we had the most success. It was a full broadcasting program. In fact, it was a job training program, federally funded job training program. They call them STEM programs now. Mm-hmm. We call them school to work programs. So you would have a student for 3 years, sophomore, junior, senior year, and you would advance their learning about broadcasting all the way through. In the early days, those kind of courses were more technical than production like they are now. Technical like how to fix TVs, how to fix radios, all electronic. Mm-hmm. But then those jobs started going away, and the students were more enthralled, now that they're in a media world, were more enthralled in how do you make those programs that go on the radio and on TV and now on the internet. And so those classes have evolved into production classes. And so students now learn how to write, edit, shoot, storyboard, prep, everything that goes behind the scenes to a broadcast, TV, radio, internet. And then they produce those. Then those go out into competitions. And they actually put together a portfolio like you or I would put our, you mentioned before, your audition tape.
Sure.
Right? Sure. They would put together an audition reel. Here's the work I've done. Because what's the first thing that, when you get out of school and you go to apply for a radio or TV station, what's the first thing they say to you? Well,
what have you done?
Yeah. What have you done? Mm-hmm. Commercially. They don't care that you worked, you did morning drive for 4 years at your college radio station. They don't care.
Sure.
So we help them put together an audition tape or a reel or whatever, and then they can take that and try to get jobs, and we try to place them in jobs. And a lot of these students may not go on to college. And that was the reason behind these courses, is for students who might not be able to afford college, may not have the test scores to be able to get into college, or those kinds of things. So when we were at CVS, I was there about, I think, 11, 12 years. It was a program started from scratch. There was nothing but 4 walls. I built a studio, TV studio, radio studio, and we started partnering with outside agencies to help bring more industry people into the classroom so the kids would get a feel for what's going on out there. And we partnered with an outside agency that helps people produce film. And so I started a summer program. We took 15 of our students, all different ages. One of their assignments during the school year was to write scripts, about 15 of them. Public service announcement, commercial, a documentary, a comedy, a drama, all different kinds of scripts. And we would take the comedy and drama scripts, send them to this agency. They'd pick the one they want to do. I'd get the kids together, and for 6 weeks, we would produce that short film. And for 5 years that we had the program, we won 4 Chicago Student Emmy Awards and 2 National Student Emmy Awards.
Wow.
Amongst dozens of other film festival awards. We even got accepted in a film festival in England, one of our films.
Man.
So the kids, now they can say, well, yeah, I wrote the script, but it also won an Emmy Award.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
So that's something that I put together because the kids needed to have recognition of their work as opposed to just saying, well, I did 5 commercials, what's my grade? I didn't want them to do it for the grade. I wanted them to get a sense of, here's what it's like out in the real world, and if you do a good enough job, here's the reward. You may not get paid, even though we had a couple of students who won some scholarships, but here's the reward. Here's, an actual Emmy Award.
That's, yeah.
And now you can take that somewhere and go, well,
Sure.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
That's an impressive thing. I did a film, here's my Emmy.
Exactly.
Right.
And then everyone who worked on it, the agency only gave out one of the Emmys to the whole group. So we only had that to display. But then they printed out certificates with the Emmy emblem on it and signed by the association and everything, that they won. So everyone got one of those. The adults, the students, everyone who worked on it got one of those certificates. So you can put that in your portfolio and say, oh, yeah, and by the way, I worked on 4 films that won Emmy Awards.
Roger, I'm very familiar with the workings of Ridgewood High School and how things work, but I'm not as familiar with Chicago public schools. Were you actually a teacher, or were you in some other capacity when you did this?
No, I was actually a teacher. I was a fully certified teacher. I went back to school. Back to school. Great movie. But I like to tell people I've never met a career that I didn't like. And I've done about 4 major careers in my life. One of them was leaving public relations, which I was in at the time, and deciding I wanted to teach. Well, I had to go back to school for 2 years to get my certification. And got my certification. This was about 24 years ago. Got my certification. The first teaching job I had was at Downers Grove North. And it was a fill position because the broadcasting teacher had wanted to advance their degree and went to Northern Illinois University, work on their TV station there, which I think was a CNN affiliate at the time. And so I came in for a year, and Downers Grove North has, North and South, share a radio frequency, WDGC. And so
I picked it up being out in Woodridge.
Yeah, you're right.
Right.
And it's you can, the signal is very definite. Coming home from there, I would hit the interchange from I-80, is it 80 or 88?
88.
88, coming back, hit the interchange onto the tollway, and as soon as you come back up out of 88 onto the tollway, no signal.
Right.
It's gone.
Right.
So, yeah, it's very definite as far as where the signal goes to. But they would share the frequency. So, half the week South would have it, the other half North would have it. And they needed some focus out there. And I came in and I reorganized it. I formed a news department. I formed a sports department. We put their sports talk show on the air, on TV. We put cameras in the radio studio. We started doing live football broadcasts with a pregame and postgame. We got commercial sponsors for the football broadcast.
That's what
and
we need,
basketball.
commercial sponsors.
You know what, though, Jim?
Yeah.
I have to say, you're sort of you want to sort of make light in a sense.
I know.
But what I see,
Yeah.
what Roger's telling me so far is something that actually we all should know. I mean, he is a very motivated guy,
Yeah.
and just put it seems everything he had into what he did, no matter where he was at,
Right.
which made him very successful.
Right.
Yeah, it's. I didn't know any other way to do
No,
it.
no.
This is not a job. Teaching's not a job you can go in half baked.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say something else, but it's radio. So,
John always has a priest on speed dial just because of us.
you got
So,
your finger on the button in there.
just because of us.
I know,
he's
right.
always on call.
Why are you pointing at me, John? I don't. Man, telling you.
Well, good. I'm glad I'm not the first. But yeah, it's first a couple of things enter into it. One, I have a love for it. Seriously.
You do,
How?
obviously.
Don't tell anyone this, but I would do it for nothing.
No, I won't tell anybody that.
Thank you.
Really, you shouldn't have told me that.
Well, there goes my paycheck.
I know, right? Yeah, right.
There you go.
Give me some crayons. I'll write one out for you. But not only would I do it for nothing, but as my wife knows and has complained about many times, is that I would do it 24/7. That's how much I love it.
Mm-hmm.
That's broadcasting. Teaching is the same way. It's just something I found that I just love doing. Working with young people, seeing their eyes light up at a moment, the magic moment. Turning a child around who doesn't care about anything to actually caring about their lives, whether it's broadcasting, English, living, whatever it is.
Sure.
You know, I had one student at Chicago Vocational, gang member. That's all he knew, was gang banging. Didn't have much of a focus. Back in that day, everybody wanted to be a rap star. You know, they'd have these competitions in the hallways and in the classrooms and the lunchrooms, and that's all they did. And they were all going to make tons of money. No, you're not. You know, because the music industry chews you up, spits you out, and you just really don't understand the workings of it. So I tried to incorporate as much as I could into the classroom. And the end of one of the years, this was when we were just starting that summer program. So at the end of one of the school years, I walk up to him and I say, "Look, what are you doing this summer?" And he says, "Nothing." I says, "I got a job for you." And this kid worked on each of the 5 movies. He got each of the 4 local Emmy citations and the 2 nationals. And they don't give out the national anymore. That only lasted 5 years, and they stopped it because they lost funding for it. But they honored high schools all over the country. The nationals weren't just Chicago. These were high schools all over the country. So he's got that, and now he's got his own recording studio. He's a producer. And his brother does video, so they do, you know, they produce the songs and then they produce the music videos. And he travels all over the country. He's meeting all the right people, and he's got his own production house here in Chicago.
Wow.
He's his own businessman.
He's
he went to college, and he says, if it was not for you coming up to me that day in the hallway, I'd be dead.
Roger, before I forget to say this, because
Finish your thought. Finish your thought.
Okay.
No, it'll be brief. I have to say, our program will be tomorrow, at 10 o'clock in the morning, John? And I'm not so concerned about who hears it in the village, but this is, to me, it's must-hear radio for our administration, our teachers, and our students.
We're going to link it up. I'll link it on my Facebook page when it's available, and I think we'll link it up on WRHS Facebook page, too. In the meantime, let's take a station break.
You are listening to Armchair Experts from the John Levita Broadcast Center on Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network on Wednesday, September the 16th, the year of our Lord 2015, with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro. And this is Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM, Norridge, Illinois. And now, back to Jim and Rich on Armchair Experts.
A very different Armchair Experts
Well,
today, and it's very enjoyable.
yeah.
We have a real expert.
We have an
That's
expert.
the big difference. We actually
That's
have
the
an
thing.
expert.
We have an expert.
That was
today.
your that was your first mistake.
Yeah, that's You like that
Standing
music.
out on the street, and he's any experts, and I happen to drive by when you yelled it out. I go, what?
I'm
I
an
was gonna say,
expert.
Roger,
I'll come in.
This white car was just coming down the street.
Yeah, right.
We grabbed him out of the car, and there he is. And we actually got an expert.
Oy. Yeah, I do love that music. Yes, I do. Yeah.
You know, I keep suddenly starting to want to talk like this.
Yeah, I know, right?
Smooth jazz.
Smooth jazz, right?
89.7.
What was the brand? It was Neruda was the music label out of, I think, Milwaukee or something. And when I was working at City Hall and doing video productions for the different departments, I was looking for some free production music, and that's what this one sounds like.
You know, I think I might have picked that out because Kevin, I think when we first started this, I was actually doing a TV show, and Jim wasn't with me yet. And
He had
Kevin
me as a
had,
guest one time.
What did you call it, Roger? The type of album? Or did you have a name for it? But he had
Well, the music label was Neruda,
Neruda.
and it was
Okay.
all soft jazz,
Okay.
new age jazz, using different things to make sounds and stuff to put you to sleep with. Yeah.
And he had me listen to a few different things, and this was the most. This is the one I liked the best, and I think that's how we came up with it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah,
I like it. Yeah. What's up?
It's interesting because you had some good luck with the programs.
Yeah,
Clemente,
yeah.
you were
Well,
only
Clemente
there. You were only there a couple of years.
Yeah,
weren't you,
a couple of years but
before
it
you
was-
retired.
It was a new Well, they already had a TV facility that they were doing. School video bulletins that they were put on the internet, and then they had an internal daily bulletin announcement that they had a makeshift radio studio for, and but it wasn't part of this school to work program. And a new principal came in trying to build up the school. It was another school that kind of had an image issue, and I had worked with the principal over at Chicago Vocational, so they knew what I was capable of doing. They wanted me to come in and do the same thing at Clemente. And so we started the program. It was rough the first couple of years because any new program that comes in that kids get put into where they don't know what they're getting into. And I had the same thing at Chicago Vocational because, again, that was a program we started from nothing. So it took a few years for the reputation of the program to get around to the school. Like, here's a great class. You can be very creative, and the teacher is going to make you work, as opposed to some other program where it's you show up, you get an A.
sure.
And there were programs like that, but so we started this at Clemente, and we would have kept going. Unfortunately, I got sick. So that was the main reason behind my retirement. And I just could not give even 50% anymore to the
you were
classroom.
struggling.
And so I just the Chicago Public Schools, the contract, there was something I found in there about when you could retire, and I said, let's do this because I just don't see. One, I didn't think I'd ever be back anywhere. To be honest with you, I had bladder cancer, and it had been aggressive, and knock on wood that I've survived. But
Ornery as ever.
ornery as ever, yeah. But again, the thing that I found out that was different at Clemente as opposed to Chicago Vocational was the internet. And so many of the kids in the Clemente classes were already producing their own videos. The equipment had gone in 13 years. The equipment had gone from a VHS camcorder and an actual VHS editing system where you needed several TVs and several editing machines and a switcher board and separate audio inputs and all of that stuff.
John's nodding.
John's nodding. The good old days, right? So, and that was very expensive. And not many high schools could afford that equipment.
Sure.
So, so in the 13 or 14 years since I started the program there, all of a sudden, all that equipment went onto a laptop. Let me go beyond that. All of that equipment went onto a phone.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was just going to say it's
It's
at this point now.
Exactly. It's in your hand. I mean, that was a lot of equipment back in 2000. That was $50,000 worth of equipment for one editing system.
Yep.
Now, I've got a cell phone that I'm paying $20 a month for that I can videotape, edit, audio dub, voice dub, background music, titles, and I can win an award with that.
Wow. Well, let me ask you this though, because one of the things that we've been talking about with, John has been part of this and Jim as well, is there seemed to be a thought at the high school that, say, when we do a basketball game or a football game, that we could do it just as that we could do it with an iPad as opposed to a camera. Now, would you say? I mean, what would you say about that? I will just leave it open like that.
All right. Personal preferences. Could you do it? Sure. Would it look smooth?
No. That was the statement that was my feeling.
Now, do you need a $200,000 studio camera? No. Do you need a $200 camera on a tripod with control arms? Yes.
Okay. That's good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, easy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Easy. And now you can have two cameras. Say take your basketball example. Two cameras up in the top in the stands, getting the wide action and medium close-up. You could have a camera behind each basket.
Which is essentially what we do.
And you can have one or two cameras in the stands doing interviews.
Okay.
John is nodding. You want to jump on the mic, John?
That sounds pretty much the way we get set up.
That sounds pretty much the way.
Majority of the basketball games that we do over at Ridgewood, we use about 8 cameras.
Yeah.
I have a camera behind each basket. I have one camera that looks at Jim and Rich across the court.
Do you have to replace that every week because they keep cracking, right? Okay, so there's cost involved.
There's a recurring cost. There's a recurring cost.
And then we have a couple cameras down on the floor. And then we have what had happened one day. Jim was looking over the railing to try to look at the scoreboard, because when we go over there, you'll see the scoreboard is way off, and he had to lean over. So I said to Kevin, I says, we have to put a camera looking at the scoreboard and put a monitor right in front of Jim so he can look at the monitor instead of giving us all a heart attack. He's going to fall over the railing.
Right. Okay.
And that's one of the things I came up with. So we have a scoreboard camera. We have a camera on 2 cameras on the floor and cameras upstairs on the track.
Okay.
That look at that watch the game.
Good. And then you might even have a roving reporter does interviews during the game or interview the coach, and so you have a cameraman.
We haven't reached that point.
All right.
Now you're giving us thoughts.
This
is
I'm an idea guy. That's what I do.
One of the things I think one of the things
that.
we've said, and there's always been, as I get my list of items to read during there, would you like to, be a part of the broadcast? And come to the media club, etc. And I keep saying, we'd love to see somebody pick up the role of play-by-play, and then Rich and I can become the wacky sidekicks doing pre, post, and halftime shows, because there's one thing we know we can do really well, and that's wacky and old.
Now, don't look at me when you say that.
No, not you, John. Not you, John.
No.
You run us into the ground.
But yeah, I don't. Why aren't the students doing the broadcast?
I don't know. John, you might be
John?
able to answer that better than we can.
You came up with a point just a little bit ago.
Yeah.
At one time, people were very interested in radio and television broadcasting.
Right.
But what came upon that thing that you got in your hand, that little cell phone,
The phone,
and
sure.
that stuff there, and even my assistant that helps me at the school.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell him to do something. All of a sudden, I see him. He's monkeying with the phone,
Right.
and that aggravates me to no end.
Well, we have
but people nowadays don't have the interest in radio and television broadcasting like we did when we
Right.
were younger. Because now it's all iPhones and all this other.
And the I've read articles lately where it said that the industry is just kind of going by the wayside.
That's right.
Radio itself, because of so much other media.
Right. There is, but there is evidence that radio is not losing listeners. That as much as people want to go to the internet and listen to podcasts, as much as people want to watch videos on YouTube, as much as people want to read newspapers on the internet or read what they consider to be news reports, even though it's not journalism.
Most of them are garbage.
Right. There's still a whole process that goes behind that.
Right.
And you can't have that without the people behind the scenes
That's
producing that.
Sure.
Now, you got involved, you just talking about that new kind of concept. Now, I know for a while you were doing something with Rivet Radio.
Right. Well, that's...
A podcast,
I can't-
essentially something.
Yeah, I can't take credit for that.
No, but you were part of it. You
right.
were on you call yourself on the air?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, on demand.
Well, what is Rivet?
Well, Rivet is an app. It's a smartphone app that allows you to program the type of news you get. And it's read by broadcasters. So
Okay.
it's in partnership with Associated Press for the national, international stuff, local stuff. There's a lot more variety now in there than when I first started with them a couple of years ago when they were just starting. And now we had a reporter who was out at Riot Fest all 3 days interviewing all the acts and then putting together reports based on that and coverage about Riot Fest. You can now revisit all that on Rivet Radio. They call it Rivet Radio even though it's on your smartphone. So you download the app. You can click on any number of categories that you want to hear the stories from, and a reporter, true journalist, will be voicing, after having written, will be voicing that report.
You keep saying something that rings a bell with me all the time. When you talk about written, and you said further back in the interview, one of the stops you had made high school wise, the writing of the story. A couple things. I always think, I tell my kids, I tell any kid that I have a close relationship with, speaking well and writing well will get you a long way in this world. If you can do both of those, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Or one or the other is very, very good as well. I was going to say, though, when you were teaching, Roger, in the writing area, did you ever partner with, say, English or anything like that, just to make it a dual type of thing?
Well, we were supposed to, and we did, co-curricular activities. So history department, English department. The thing about broadcasting, the way that I taught it, is that we did all that already.
Okay.
We exposed them to history of broadcasting. We exposed them to proper broadcast style as opposed to print style, as opposed to term paper style. We did foreign languages in broadcasting. In news and sports, there's a lot of foreign languages you have to know. The people who put the equipment together, the students who put the equipment together, they had to be able to add and subtract. So there was math involved. When you're dealing with a 30-second commercial, well, can I go 40 seconds? No, it's 30 seconds. No. Can I go 5 seconds? No, it's 30 seconds. So when you're talking about writing, I wrote 5 seconds. Write some more. And if you keep on them and keep on them, pretty soon they're going to realize, oh, yeah, I can write more. I can express myself differently. And so those things were as much a challenge in teaching and learning in the class as holding a camera.
Yeah, I think there's too many people in our local situation who are just looking at this almost from a surface perspective, where you hold the camera and somebody does something in front of the camera, and that's all they know. That's all they think about. But you're bringing a lot of things that are, in all types of different areas of the school into play in this area here. And I'm not sure that the people who are making the decisions are really in tune with that, because
I don't think they understand it. They just see the surface.
Well, they're like
they
us.
just see
We're all consumers of media.
Right.
We only see and hear the final product.
Right.
You don't know. I'm holding a Sun-Times newspaper here for today, and we think, oh, good, this is something I get delivered to my door, or something I throw. Well, how much is it now?
It's
$1, a buck, 4 quarters into the newspaper machine, or throw a buck to the newspaper vendor. You have no idea how all this got in here.
I couldn't even imagine.
Do you know why this page? I'm turning to a page, today's Sun-Times, page 4 and 5. Rauner could be Rom's roadblock. Okay. Do you know why this page looks that way?
Physically, you're talking?
Yeah, physically.
Are you including the ad on the
Everything,
bottom of the site?
everything.
No, I don't.
No.
Have no idea.
Do you? You know what went in this newspaper first?
The ad.
The ad.
Okay.
Do you know why the story fits in there?
Because it fits with the
They
ad?
edited
it to fit
from
in.
the bottom up. Cut out that's what print journalism is.
Okay.
You put the most important thing up first, and then all the details afterwards. And when they finally measure this, because these columns are measurable.
Right.
If you go into print journalism, you learn this. How many column inches is this? And you have to determine, depending on the newspaper, Tribune's different column inches than the Sun-Times.
My wife was a journalism major.
So you understand what I'm talking about.
Sure.
So, and then how big does the picture go? Why is it this picture? Why does it go here? Why is there another picture inserted? What goes into the headlines? What font do you use?
Sure. Wow.
5 other people have to read this story.
Right.
And then if it doesn't quite fit, if the writer wrote too much, then the editor has to start cutting from the bottom up to make it fit and make it make sense.
Yeah.
And all of this has to be done by a staff working behind desks that if you or I walked into, you would say, what the hell are these people doing? Because it doesn't look like they're doing anything.
Yeah.
But that's how you get your newspaper every day. And the same thing in production, in broadcast production.
Did you see? There's a gentleman that comes into the library on Fridays, and he's a former teacher, and I think he actually taught at Clemente for a while, but I'm not sure when. But he was showing me. It was the first broadcast of the Today Show, I think it was, with Dave Garroway.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's on YouTube.
Sure,
and he walks through the different areas, and I know this is antique, but when you're talking about what each person is doing, because he'd go from one desk and he'd go to somebody with equipment, and then just somebody at a desk writing, and explain a little bit about what they were all doing, and it was a fascinating thing. And it's something, what you're talking about, Roger, is none of us realize in order for all of this to be produced and be in that box for us to put the quarters in, what is actually happening and how many people are involved in putting this whole thing together.
And that's why that's what you have to teach in the class, even though the kids don't want to learn it. Because you have too many young people nowadays, and even in our days, everyone who wanted to be a famous actor thought that all they had to do was go sit at a candy store soda fountain and be discovered, without having done any work whatsoever.
Sure.
And teachers, how many teachers do you know tell their kids, oh, you got to pay your dues, you got to do this, you got to do that before you have any chance of anyone being famous. And I try to, I don't try to dash their dreams, but I try to make it realistic in the classroom. There was a thing that I did a long time ago, and I just recently saw it again on Twitter. Someone had posted it that someone else had done. Here's the deal. I had a lot of sports kids in the radio and TV major, a lot of football, basketball players, baseball players too. They all thought, I'm going to the majors. That's it. I'm this cool in school, and I'm going to make it in the majors. And so one day I sat down with them, and I got some of the basketball players. I think it was a basketball analogy. And I said, how many basketball players on a pro team? And I forgot what the number was, 15, 12, whatever. I said, okay, how many pro teams are there? They told me. We started doing the math.
The math, right?
Talk about math in broadcasting. Right. Okay. So we did the math, and I said, okay, how many colleges are there that have basketball programs? Oh, there's, I don't know. Okay, let's do the math. Okay, all right. And so you got, 100,000 playing college.
Right.
And you got 1,000 playing pro. I said, what percentage? And they figured that out, and they go, oh, crap. I go, are you that good? I said, now,
are you that good?
Yeah, let's go to high school.
Yeah.
Let's go to high school. If you got 100,000 in college, you got 1 million kids playing high school basketball.
Yeah, probably.
Right.
Now, you got 1%, less than 1%. No, 100,000, million, 100, okay. I wasn't good in algebra. So you got 1%, 1% going to college. And 1%, less than 1%, going to pro. I says, is that you? Are you that good? Have you been playing all 4 years of high school? Are you number one on the team? Is your team winning championships? Are you a team player or are you an individual player? How good are you? Well, I'm not that good. Well, then you better find something that you can do to make money.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And there are more people producing TV shows and producing radio shows and writing TV and radio than there are people in front of the camera as a superstar on network TV.
Mm-hmm.
There are more out-of-work actors that are waiting tables than have ever appeared on a TV show as a star.
There's a guy who went to Ridgewood.
Okay.
That I knew from semi-pro football days.
Oh, okay.
And Guy Narduli.
Sure.
Guy was just thrilled because he's got a part in a CBS show.
Oh, fantastic.
Recently, so.
Yeah.
And Guy has had to pay his dues.
Mm-hmm.
But he's thrilled that he's getting an opportunity for something.
Sure.
And, there's a picture of him in his, his wardrobe and hashtag whatever the show is and that. But he said, I'm getting my chance.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
I love what Roger was saying because I'm thinking I read a biography of Marlon Brando recently, and he was saying he hated to do stage plays. Loved the movies, but the thing about the stage play was, and I think what people don't realize, and I guess the point I'm trying to make is hard work.
Yeah.
I don't care if you're an actor, an athlete, or you're a newspaper guy, or what you are. What he was saying, you have to replicate this performance because it's a different audience every night, and a matinee and on the weekend. But you have to make it good every time because it's always a different audience. And that is a tough thing to do.
And
whether
it's live.
you're, you know,
And
it's
yeah,
live.
it's live.
Yeah.
So-
and there are actors who enjoy the feedback from a
Right,
live
from
audience
live audiences.
more
Mhm.
than they do doing film.
And I'll tell you, a lot of people, a lot of actors who are on TV, there's a hiatus from their
Right.
shows,
Right.
and they will go do stage plays to kind of get that feeling back.
Sure.
Because TV, there's no audience. It's the camera, and you do it over and over and over. You do it out of sequence. You do half a scene, then you switch the camera around to the other side, then you do it again, and there's a lot of sitting around and waiting
Sure.
in TV production, video production, and movie production, and there's no waiting on the stage. You come out, it's then, it's now, then you're done.
There's a local guy, Tommy Gagnon, I believe I think he's a grip. And when they shoot movies in Chicago, he's always involved. So years ago when they shot the Blues Brothers, and they did that chase scene, and part of it was in downtown Park Ridge, another good friend of mine, Tony Adornetto, he was invited just to watch that. So I see Tony after, and he's telling me about this, and I said, Tony, I said, that must have been great watching that. He goes, boring, most boring thing I ever saw in my life.
Yeah.
I said, what do you mean boring? It's the chase. He goes, yeah, but you don't see it. It's all, like, as Roger's saying, it's all segmented, or I don't know if that's the right word to
It's a
use.
good- it's a good word.
It really is.
Yeah.
And I remember years ago with the Bob Newhart show when they filmed the opening in downtown Chicago,
Yeah.
the way they walked there. I'm married somebody else at the time, and my sister-in-law worked downtown, and she wanted to try to make sure she could get somehow in the crowd scene.
Sure.
And she said it was boring. She
Yeah.
described the same thing. It was
Boring
boring.
work.
And she finally got to the point where she managed to get herself in position and be behind Bob when he stopped at the light, waiting for it to
Okay,
change to cross
sure.
the street. And all of a sudden, you saw Mary just kind of lean to the right. So she got herself.
Yeah.
She got herself on camera.
And she's lucky that they used that shot.
and she's lucky. That's right.
Thinking about what Roger was saying too about how I don't know how technical some of this stuff can be. There was another gentleman who comes into the library, older guy, for a movie. I think Julia Roberts was in the movie. It was a wedding. There was a wedding scene. They picked this guy off the streets of Chicago. He was downtown. We think you look good in the tux. We want you to be in this in this movie scene. Okay, I'll do it. You got nothing else to do. I'll do it. He said they shot the one scene of her coming down the aisle multiple times. He said, from where I'm standing, he goes, it looks perfect. Why are they reshooting it? But he says, the guy who's the director is saying, this is the way I want it to look for the audience when
right.
it's finalized. So he's, getting it perfect. There's a perfection to it. And it's really, again, you go to the movie, you see it in finished form, you don't even think about it.
Yeah.
But all the thought that went into just creating what he wanted as the proper atmosphere for that scene is...
Let me give an example.
It was an example, too.
Yeah.
I mean, the only time I've ever seen anything shot for TV was a number of years ago. We went to a concert at Orchestra Hall.
Okay.
And it was going to be a Valentine's concert that was going to be taped for PBS.
Okay.
One of the soloists that night singing was one of my favorite, Placido Domingo.
Awesome.
And everything was being done out of sequence.
That's
They
right.
told us up front, we're going to get everything done with the orchestra first because we'll be damned if we're going to pay these guys overtime.
That's right. That's right.
And
sure.
get everything done, and everything we shoot, we will have to wait after it's done to see if it's acceptable.
Right.
And I still remember on one thing, Domingo sang his solo. It was beautiful. It was being introduced by Lynn Redgrave and Timothy Dalton.
Wow.
Did the intro, and Dalton managed to get everything out the way he was supposed to, because one opening he blew it, and very distinguished actor suddenly
Sure.
going and having to do the whole thing
Right.
all over again. But he finished the solo, and we're standing there, and we're waiting, and it seems to be taking an inordinately long time to
Yeah.
get it done. And Domingo's up there, and he's going, it's not my fault.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, it's not my fault.
Yeah.
He said, whatever it is not my fault. And they finally got the signal that it went, signal came from the back. And they said it's good. And Domingo threw his hands up in the air.
Field goal.
Field goal, and it was out.
You got to do a break?
I think I have to do a break.
When we come back, I'll give you an example of how long it takes. And the example are the short films that we did.
Okay.
All
All
right.
right.
Yeah.
Mr. DeVita? We're good?
You do it.
Oh, I get to do it?
Yeah.
This is WRHS FM Norwich, 89.7 on a clear day. You can hear us on River Road.
Actually, I heard us on York and Grand the other day.
All right.
Wow.
We're pumping out.
That's because they have a good engineer over there.
The 89.7 love pump. Just
There you go.
kicking it out.
That's it.
All right. Your example. What you were talking
So our short films took 6 weeks to do. All right. There was a lot of pre-production. We had to finish the script. We had to audition actors. We had to go find sites, locations. We had to get props. We had to design costumes. We had to develop 2 of the films. We had singing, so we had to actually have the songs done before we shot. So all this was done. We had to have rehearsals. And then we went and prepared to shoot the film. Now, it's a short film, 5 minutes total, open to close, because that's the requirement for the film festivals. All right, no longer than 5 minutes. We spent 5 days, Monday through Friday, 5 hours a day, shooting a 5-minute movie.
Wow.
Okay? And we had to set up, prior to that week, exactly what day and what time we will be at each location, what equipment is required at each location, how much setup time, how much strike time, how much time would be allowed for the actual videotaping of the scene, and our entire crew were high school students. High school student director, high school student producer, high school student camera person, high school student sound, high school student boom operator, high school student grip, high school student everything. 15 kids worked the crew. Okay? Adults standing behind watching, about 5 adults watching, whispering in their ear. Storyboard was also done before we went, so we knew what was going, and from the storyboard we could put together a production schedule. 5 days to film it, and then 2 weeks to edit it.
Wow. Roger, can I ask you that? If you said this prior and I missed it, I apologize. But
That's all right.
I was going to now, when you first started getting into this with the high schools where you taught, did you sort of do this on the fly, or you were bringing some other expertise into it? I mean, you had expertise from obviously being on the air at different
Right.
locations, but was a lot of it things that you just picked up as you went on?
You mean as a teacher or as broadcasting?
as well
Or for
okay,
the film and
instance,
stuff?
for the film.
Well, this is stuff I learned in school.
Okay.
Yeah, stuff I learned in school, and I'm a student of media.
Okay.
So, as a teacher, I was always looking for things, because obviously not a kid in the world listens to their teacher. No student in the world listens to their teacher. You know, 3 months later, it's like, I got an F on the exam. Well, I told you to study. Why don't you listen to me? I don't know. Right?
Yeah.
So I know that they weren't going to listen to me. I'm just an old fart. Yeah, and for a while at CVS, I actually had a ponytail.
I remember you with
Yeah,
those days.
That's right.
Yeah.
So they thought, here's an old fart who thinks he's still a hippie. You know, who the hell's going to listen to him? He doesn't listen to hip hop. He doesn't know who this guy is. I'm not listening to him. So I had to find other means to educate them. So I was always looking for stuff in their media avenue, YouTube videos.
Mm-hmm.
All right, audio files, everything that they listen to and they watch, I had to find, and I found great examples. There was a TV show Oh goodness gracious! Now the mind is going into a funk here. There was an old cop TV show. Took place in, I want to say, Boston. Not Law and Order. It was before Law and Order.
Oh.
And somebody had gone and actually done a PBS show on the making of that show.
Okay.
And they took an episode. And the guy who produced / directed the Back to the Future series was the producer of the show.
Was that Zemeckis?
Yep. He was the executive producer of the show. It was his show. And they took it from the actual... At first they described what the show was, the essence of what this show is and why it was so critically acclaimed, but nobody watched it.
Mm.
The audience, because it was on against two other really great shows.
Okay.
It was on against 2020 and what was the cop show that Cheech Marin was in?
Oh.
You know which one I'm talking
Yeah.
about. All right. So their show was up against those two. And so the ratings were never big. So they went into what the essence of it was, and then they started at the very first idea meeting. Here are ideas for shows we'd like to do next season. And they focused on one show, one episode, and they followed it all the way through the script writing and showed how many different times he had to rewrite the script, getting notes from the network that you couldn't say...
Don't say it.
I'm trying to remember.
Don't say it. John's got the priest on speed dial.
It was a 4-letter word
Okay.
that the network had a trouble with how many times it was used.
Okay.
And they said, you got to get rid of all but 2. And showing how the guy was on the phone fighting for his script, fighting for, this makes the story. You can't tell me to change this.
Yeah.
The guy dies, the main character dies at the end, and if any viewer knows how they feel on a TV show, a cop show, they always feel great when they get the guy at the end.
It was Nash Bridges, by the way.
Nash
Cheech
Bridges
Marin's
was the one it
the
was up
other-
against,
right,
2020.
Right.
So, Homicide
That's it.
was the show. So, but the guy dies at the end of this. D'Onofrio was the guy before he did start doing Law and Order and everything.
Died in there, too, didn't he?
Yeah, but it was a great episode.
Yeah.
Great episode. And so they followed the whole thing through, and then at the end of the documentary, they showed the final episode. They showed how many there's the director gets to edit, then the executive producer gets to edit, then the writer gets to come in. They showed how they laid down Foley track, the sound effects. They showed how they had to reshoot a scene. They showed a big stunt was involved. They showed how that worked, how they fashioned these subway cars. It was amazing. It's like actually being on the set without all the boredom waiting around.
Okay.
Okay?
Seeing everything.
Everything. Everything.
Wow.
And who the new director was, and so it was marvelous. Then we watched the show at the end. So I did a worksheet, and all along I said, okay, when did they start? What was the month and day? They said they were starting this, and now how long did it take to produce the show? So they had to go back and they had to add the students, and then I asked them thinking questions, not just fill in the blank. And so I said, how do you think this show will look? How will you feel about this program now that you've seen how they put it together? Then we showed it, and I said, now tell me how you feel about it now. Did you enjoy it? One of the things I said to my students all these years, the very first time I had them in class, I says, there's one thing I'm going to do that you're going to hate me for the rest of your life. I'm going to make you hate seeing movies and videos. And they said, why? Yeah. Because you're going to, after you're done, if you learn anything from me, you're going to sit there watching TV and movies, critiquing every camera angle, every lighting, every sound, everything. You're going to sit there and you're going to hate me because you will never enjoy another one the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And I was right. Every year, the kids would like go away for a couple of years and say, Mr. Banish, I was watching this TV show, and do you know that there were 3 shots in there that they had the wrong camera angle, and did you know there was a continuity problem? And I go,
Man, I
really?
would.
And
Wow.
the second thing that I ruined them on life for, there's a song that they will never, ever get out of their head. Christopher Cross's Sailing. In training them to use the online video editing program, we used both Final Cut from Apple and we used Adobe Premiere. I've taught both. And the very first project they have is a music video. And the music they have to use, the only song they can use, is Christopher Cross's Sailing. Sailing,
Sure, yeah.
right? Really, really boring.
Yeah.
And I gave them 200 pictures of water, waves, sailing, lakes, rivers, and I said, you have to make me cry at the end of your video. You have to produce the pictures with the song in such a way that I'm going to feel so emotional from the song and the pictures, I'm going to cry at the end. And you have to have a title here, you have to have a title there. You can't just cut from picture to picture. You have to use transitions, proper transitions. I do not want to see a picture every 10 seconds, because that was the default. When you put a picture on the timeline, it defaults to 10 seconds. I said, that's not going to cut it. I'll know, and if you're done in a half an hour, I'll know that that's what you did. And then we'll grade it. And there was a grading rubric that I gave them ahead of time. They knew exactly what they were supposed to do. We got some great videos out of it. But they listened to that song at least 100 times each. And I actually got a text from some kid several years ago saying, Mr. Badish, I was in the grocery store and they're playing Sailing. So those two things ruined my students for their life. But it built character. It built character.
I'm never going to be able to listen to that song again without thinking about
And
this.
they all say, well, why can't I use this? I says, because your song hasn't won Grammy for Best Song, Best Album, Best New Artist, but he won like 5, 6 Grammy Awards with that song.
Yeah, and I always asked myself, why?
You know, Raj, I belong to an organization called the 511 Club. We do welfare work for the Chicago Fire Department.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, in fact, we have a canteen truck right down right at Elston and Roscoe, where we go out and serve refreshments to the firemen. But anyways, a year ago, the commissioner got us into Chicago Fire, and we watched some of the filming of Chicago Fire and Chicago PD. And of course, me being interested in radio and television broadcasting, it was very, very interesting to see how that and exactly what you're talking about. I absolutely saw Kevin and I. We were both there for both programs, and that's done about the 15th and Campbell or 30 on the south side of Chicago, and we were right there in Cinema Studios. So watching all that.
Yeah. You know what? It was interesting because Ron Onesti had a big festival down there recently.
I am very good friends with him.
He's a good guy.
Yes,
I think he has done, I don't know if he's still doing it, but on our podcasts, I thought that Onesti was doing some programs over the last several years.
He was doing some things on WGN Plus.
Yeah,
and I don't know if he's still doing that.
Yeah,
You
and
know.
have you worked with Dane Neal?
I know Dane through Hannah Stanley,
Uh-huh.
who's his partner
Well,
in a lot of stuff. And they do a show, well, they come in as guests on a show on Tuesdays or Wednesdays, and Hannah has her own show. So I know him through that.
Yeah.
one
Okay.
of
Well,
yours.
I say alongside because Dane Neal was the morning man with Joe Gentile on WJJG.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do a food show. Him and Hannah
Hannah
do a
do
food
a
show.
And
Yeah.
they had
Flavor
a big
HD.
they had a big power failure, a big electrical problem where Dane lives out in Westmont, and he had all kinds of expensive fish in his fish tank, and I went out there with a generator and set up power for him so he wouldn't lose his fish.
Oh, that's great.
So I know Dane Neal very, very well.
You know,
Excellent.
we've discovered again what a small world.
A
we
very
actually
small world.
have.
Very small world.
You know,
Sure.
I'm going to say,
Actually,
Ron
sure.
Onesti, years ago, when I was really heavily involved in 16-inch softball, supplied our uniform jerseys. He
There you
had
go.
a place called Softball City.
Uh-huh.
And Ron, I think, has a building. It's converted from what I don't remember out, I want to say, in St. Charles.
That's right.
He
It's
still
a show.
produces,
It's a theater.
It's a theater, the
Yeah.
Arcada Theater,
That's-
which is a great venue.
Yes.
Really
And-
outstanding
and-
venue.
And just a couple weeks ago, we had the Italia Fest in Addison.
Right.
And I worked with Ron because we did remote broadcasting for JJG
Yeah.
at the Italia Fest. And Ron was,
Yeah.
he has been a great, I haven't seen him now in a few years,
Right.
but he was a wonderful person. He and I were just great friends.
I always, every time I see the advertisements for Italian Fest and he puts it up on Facebook, I always ask the same question when I look at the entertainment list. I said, exactly what sort of pictures does Vito Zotto have of you? Why do you keep bringing him back?
You know, I'm thinking, well, actually, Roger's not our first guest, but you know what's interesting about
We've actually had people.
we have
Really?
Yes, we did.
Real live breathing ones?
We did it. We've
Yeah?
done 2 remotes too.
Yeah.
Wow. I feel very humble and impressed.
But I think our next guest will be Al Marks, and what I'm going to say is I think you're going to find, even though they're in 2 different areas, you're going to find a lot of parallels
There's
between
gonna
the
be
way
a lot
they
of things.
the way they operate.
The person we'd like to have as a guest here soon was the head basketball coach and the head football coach at Ridgewood for many years.
right.
And I will tell Al when he's here, he's the guy that's the reason I became an accountant. Because when I wanted to go to Columbia and major in communications and broadcasting, my parents say, "Oh, you've done so well in that class with that nice Mr. Marks. Why don't you go and study accounting somewhere, and then
go.
you'll actually make a living and not be doing a broadcast in somebody's basement?"
And they were right.
I am.
That's what ended up happening anyway.
Hey, we all had that speech. My parents gave me the same speech. They said, "You're never going to make any money at it. Why do you want to do that? Why don't you get a real job?" And I've had that conversation with a lot of my students. I had it with 2 students over at Downers Grove North with their parents on graduation night. Parents came up and said, "Yeah, he really wants to go into I guess the father was in accounting or real estate or something like that. He really wants to go into broadcasting. He's very impressed with what you've done and this, and he really wants a future in broadcasting." I go, "Well, I don't want to, burst his balloon. He's very good at what he does, but what I have found over the years is, and what all my professors told me is, find a real job, real in air quotes, one that there's going to be an industry for, one that always needs people, one where you can make a steady living at, even though the world of the 1960s is not the world of the 2010s right now as far as professions go."
Right.
How many TV repair shops do you see out there?
Yeah, exactly.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
now electronics is not really, that's been replaced by programming.
Right.
Okay, so there are a lot of professions from back then that are not professions now, but there are a lot of new ones now. So what can you do to make a living at if you're going to raise a family? Because broadcasting is too fluid. There's not a lot of money in broadcasting, just like we were talking about the basketball teams. Right, you're going to be a big pro basketball player, make a lot of money. You're a big TV movie star, make a lot of money. There are very few who get that.
No.
Okay.
There's a guy who lives right up the street here on the 4200 block on my block on Ottawa. Mike Esposito. Mike Esposito is Steve Rosenblum's partner, but he only works the weekend on the Score because
Right.
that's all they've.
He's
that's
a
all they've-
part-timer.
Yeah, he's
He's
a
a
part-timer.
part-timer. He's not on the number 1 station in town.
Yeah.
It's the 3rd market, even though Chicago's an excellent market.
Right.
But so now I know how much he's getting paid. It is not enough to support a house, a family, or anything
you
else.
Got something else,
right?
You know.
So and the same. That's one of the main reasons I got out of broadcasting after Q101. Mm-hmm. It's like I made it to the big city. I had to leave Chicago to go to Vegas, and then I made it back, which is luck, pure luck, because the old standard is you got to start out, at a low market and then move up to a medium market, then another one, and then maybe you get to the big time. Mm-hmm. I lucked out. I don't know how, because there's no reason I would have hired me in a big city. But I don't know how I did it. But I was able to make it back to Chicago.
I think it was your plaid pants.
They liked my double knits. But I made it back, and even then, the hours, the pay, the calls in the middle of the night. Yeah. John Lennon has just been shot. I'm calling you at 2 o'clock in the morning. Get your ass together, get on the L, and do interviews. Mm-hmm. I'm like, well, nobody's going to be on the L at 2 o'clock in the morning. Tough. Do it and get into the station.
We need it for 6 o'clock.
We need it for 4 o'clock.
Okay.
And Raj, who I also was very good friends with at one time, Larry Schreiner.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. In fact, I wired his house up for telephone because I worked for Illinois Bell.
Okay.
And when you were talking about just a couple of minutes ago, when I graduated from high school, from St. Benedict's High School, I wanted to work for either the fire department as a dispatcher or for WGN Radio.
Yeah.
WGN has been in my heart for many, many years.
And there's very few people working there now.
And I'm
seriously.
Very seriously.
And I used to go up to Wisconsin Dells and sit right alongside Franklin McCormick when he used to do the remotes up at the Uphoff's restaurant.
Yeah.
And I wanted to, when I was just a little boy, I wanted to be involved in radio broadcasting. In fact, I used to have a favorite extension cord that I would walk around and talk into the extension cord, pretending that it was a microphone.
That's
and
great.
one day, my dad happened to find a microphone, and I had this thing under my pillow so nobody would steal it. And I've been involved, and then also. When I got a little bit into TV stuff, a gift box that you get like from Weebles or something.
Yeah, right.
I used to put those up on the wall, pretend those were monitors, and I had a table with switches on it.
All the different channels on there. Yeah,
there you go.
And I mean, I've been involved. My love is Chicago Fire Department and radio broadcasting.
Yeah. And as I was mentioning before, especially with kids in high school, because how many kids actually go on to make a living doing what they thought they wanted to be when they grew up? Mm-hmm. How many times were you in school, in grade school, says, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a fireman. I want to be a policeman. I want to be a doctor. I want to be a broadcaster, whatever. But what we want to do when we're 16, when we're still living at home and everyone's paying for us and the world is our oyster, is way different of what we think and want to do and what we think we can do when we're 50 years old trying to put kids through college and trying to raise a family, or just living on our own trying to make a living.
Yeah.
It's the thought process. Exactly. So that's what I try to sit down with the kids, and I kind of prided myself on the ability to see what's inside each kid that's in my class and try to steer them towards stuff. For example, there's this one kid from CVS who couldn't write, didn't want to write, hated writing because he was always forced to write, and he wasn't a good writer. And that was okay. That was okay. So I said, you know what? I think I know what you will like. I want you to produce music for all their videos. And like a fish to water, he got on the computer and he started producing soundtracks like nobody's business.
Wow.
And he's been doing that ever since.
There you go. You've got one other thing that I know you and I share a passion for.
What? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's not hanging out. Don't worry about it. You've got, old time radio.
Oh, yeah.
We met many years ago doing in a group that did old time radio recreations. We had a lot of fun doing that.
We had a blast. What was so great about it is that so much went wrong with each performance that was funnier than the actual script we were doing. It was a hoot. I'm telling you.
I would be. I remember. I remember one in a senior home where some woman announced that very loudly she had a bowel movement. All over herself. And I'm editing the script on the fly.
Yeah.
In the back, trying to get everything done so we can get out of there.
Yeah.
Because it was a script that I said, I don't want to do this. This isn't going to work. This isn't what.
That's right.
It's a nice show, but it's not what they'd want for old time radio. And we're doing this, and I'm in the back. I'm crossing out sections. We do this, and we finished it. We finished the show, and two little African American ladies came up to me and said, "Would you guys come back and do Amos and Andy?" And I went,
"Oh my goodness!"
I went, "Oh my God, that's not politically correct."
No.
And they said, "No, but it's funny."
That's funny.
It was well written. It wasn't politically correct at all. But Amos and Andy, one of the best written shows, comedy shows on radio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now you're involved with the After SAG players, and you've got a show coming up in October.
That's right. We've
Yeah,
got
yeah.
another one coming up. It's we're doing two shows, 2 episodes. One episode of Baby Snooks, which you and I have done.
You and I have done a
in the
Baby
past.
Snooks show.
This is a different one. And
Is anybody going to have to tap on a tin to make it sound like
tray.
to make it sound like a typewriter?
There you go.
Honest to God, this is how it was. Make believe this clipboard is a tin serving tray. All right? I don't even need that. I'm just doing what was done. So I always tried to do pre-recorded sound effects. It was a lot easier for our small group. But we had someone on there, and nothing wrong with doing live sound effects on our shows, SAG
Right.
After shows.
Right.
We've got live sound effects, but there's a lot of recorded stuff too.
Right.
So they wanted to do, we had a scene where someone was typing. So did they bring a typewriter? No. They had a silver tray, serving tray, and they set it on the table and they did this. And there were several lines within that typing where the typist would stop. And we would say lines and then start up again and say lines. And I remember it was you, there was the typing, and you just popped in and says, "Hold on a second, let me finish this sentence." And the typing kept, and we looked over, and she looks up at us and stops. And you said, "Okay, I'm done now." And we go on with the script. It was hilarious. Everybody was laughing.
And we never could get the doorbell to ring on
No,
time.
it was like we would stop. It says, someone would say a line, and then the doorbells would ring, and one of us would say, "Well, oh, hold on, let me get the door," and we would finish the line.
and wait.
Ding dong. or wait. Jim would say, "I think I sense someone at the door. Wait a minute, they might ring the bell." Ding dong.
Oh, and we had
that was funny.
and we had a lot of laughs.
Yeah.
And
Speaking of which,
speaking of the phone
there's
ringing,
a sound effect for you.
yeah, there you go.
my phone.
So you're doing Boston Blackie.
Yeah, we're doing Boston Blackie. That's the second episode, and it is so exciting. I've got a lot of Facebook friends, and one of them happens to be John Records Landecker. And he's
Records
just
is truly his middle name.
his middle name, and that's the name of his book.
That's right.
Which is a great book if you haven't
Okay.
read it yet.
Okay.
And he put something on Facebook fairly recently
Yeah, I saw
about how he wants to do something about old-time radio. I says, well, if you want an example of old-time radio, you got to join our group. So he showed up a week ago, I think it's been a week now,
Yeah, wow.
at the auditions. And he auditioned for the Boston Blackie episode, and he is now Boston Blackie.
Who is this now, Roger?
John Records Landecker.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So he's going to be performing. Joel Daly often comes out to auditions and gets into the shows. I didn't see him at this audition, So I don't think he's in the shows this time. Joel Daly, awesome broadcast personality from Chicago.
Bob Barron still around?
Bob Barron is there.
Bernie Allen?
No, Bernie Allen. Bernie Allen is in a senior housing right now, from what I understand, out in the suburbs.
Okay.
But he runs an old-time radio group at
the senior housing.
Right.
That's good.
Right.
Guys,
When I was with WJJG, Rod.
Yeah.
When I was with
We need to
let me
wrap
just
this up.
let me
here.
just
Pretty
one
soon.
second. I have to respond to Kevin. He just texted me that whether Roger was going to come over.
Yeah, let him know we're
And
coming.
I have to.
I've got a
I
little
have to
time.
make
Sure,
a phone
sure,
call right now, so I'm going to excuse myself. Roger, just
Pleasure.
a pleasure to meet you.
And we
Thank
need
you.
to need to
And,
wrap
uh,
up here
let me
because I
have
want to
you
get
wrap
him
up.
over there and get him on his way.
Okay. So the show is in October, real fast. October
19th, I
19th.
think.
Thank you very much. It's a Monday night. It's free. It's at the Old Library, the Cultural Center, downtown
In the
Chicago.
Claudia Cassidy Theater.
Exactly. Make sure you're there about 6:30. Shows at 7.
Connie still running the board?
Oh yes, she is.
Oh, then I got to be there.
You gotta be there.
Okay.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Hey,
It's been
this was a
pleasure.
this was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Do this, and I thank you, my friend.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad we could finally connect
And sit down and talk about this for
yeah,
hour and a half.
beautiful,
All right.
awesome. Thanks again.
Thanks to Rich Massaro. Thanks to the Doctor of the Dials, John DeVita. We will see you again in a couple of weeks, and until that time, we are Taillights.
You have been listening to Armchair Experts from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on Wednesday, September 16th, the year of our Lord, 2015, on Jack FM 89.7, WRHS FM Norwich, and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network with the WRHS sports announcers Jim Leon and Rich Massaro. This broadcast was directed by John DeVita, and a special thanks to radio station manager Kevin Zeflik of WRHS FM Norwich and the executive producer of Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network, Mr. John Chikanda. This broadcast was pre-recorded on Tuesday, September the 15th, the year 2015. Until next time, please be safe and thanks for listening. Goodbye, all. And this is Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich, Illinois. Have a good day, everyone.